Have you ever asked yourself why some people seem to move steadily forward in life, while others, despite working hard, remain stuck in the same place year after year? Think about it for a moment. You've seen classmates who seemed average but are now thriving in their careers, building businesses or living a life they once only dreamed of. Meanwhile, others with equal or even greater talent somehow find themselves frustrated, spinning their wheels, never breaking free from the cycle of mediocrity. This isn't just a matter of luck or circumstance. It's not always about having the best opportunities, the wealthiest background, or the smartest brain in the room. The truth is simpler and perhaps harder to face. The difference often lies in the mistakes people make along the way. Success doesn't just come from doing the right things, it comes from avoiding the wrong ones. And that's exactly what this video is about. Today we're going to uncover the 5 deadly mistakes that successful people never make. These are not small everyday slip-ups. They're the kind of patterns that silently sabotage progress, the hidden traps that cause people to quit before they ever reach their true potential. By the time you finish this video, you'll not only recognize these mistakes in your own life, but you'll also have a clear path to avoid them, replacing them with strategies that actually work. Now, you might be wondering, why should I listen to you? And that's fair. Let me briefly explain. Over the years, I've had the privilege of learning directly and indirectly from people who have built extraordinary results. Entrepreneurs, leaders, innovators, and high achievers. I've studied what they do differently, not just in their successes, but in the decisions they refuse to make. Along the way, I also made many of these mistakes myself. I know what it feels like to lack discipline, to freeze up in fear of failure, to waste precious time, to keep the wrong company, and to let learning slip away. But I also know what it feels like to break free. This isn't theory pulled out of thin air. These are lessons rooted in real experiences, and if you apply them, they will change the way you approach your goals. So, here's my promise. If you stay until the end, you won't just hear about these 5 mistakes, you'll walk away with a powerful roadmap that will help you avoid them and put you on the path to success faster than you thought possible. Ready? Let's dive in. Mistake number 1. Lack of discipline. One of the most common but underestimated reasons why people fail to achieve their dreams is a lack of discipline. At first glance, discipline may sound boring, even restrictive. Many people resist the very idea of it because they confuse discipline with punishment or the loss of freedom. But in reality, the opposite is true. Discipline is not a prison, it is the key that unlocks freedom. It is the invisible force that turns ambition into action, dreams into reality, and goals into consistent progress. Without it, even the brightest talent and the most exciting ideas amount to nothing more than unfulfilled potential. Successful people understand this at their core. They treat discipline not as an option but as a non-negotiable. They know that no one rises to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their habits. Picture this. 2 people start with the same dream. One wants to write a book, the other wants to build a business. Both are excited, both are passionate, and both set ambitious goals. In the first week, they are equally motivated. But as time goes on, one of them shows up every day, writing a few pages or taking small steps toward their business, even when they don't feel like it. The other only works when inspiration strikes or when conditions feel just right. A year later, the disciplined one has a finished manuscript or a functioning business, while the other still has nothing but ideas. The difference is not intelligence or talent, it is discipline. The truth is, discipline is what separates fleeting interest from lasting success. Motivation may start the engine, but it is discipline that keeps the car moving when the road gets long and difficult. Successful people don't wait to feel inspired. They build routines, systems, and habits that carry them forward regardless of mood. They know that showing up consistently is more important than showing up perfectly. They understand that small, repeated actions compound into extraordinary results over time. Yet, for most people, the lack of discipline shows up in subtle but destructive ways. It appears in the snooze button pressed 5 times each morning, in the "I'll do it tomorrow" mentality, in the unfinished projects that collect dust, and in the excuses that justify inaction. These small lapses seem harmless in the moment, but over weeks, months, and years, they form a pattern of inconsistency that robs people of their potential. It is rarely one giant failure that ruins a dream. It is the accumulation of daily neglect. Successful individuals combat this by treating discipline like a muscle. They know it grows stronger the more it is exercised. Just as you would not expect to lift heavy weights in the gym on your first day, you cannot expect perfect discipline overnight. They start small, building momentum with manageable habits. Maybe it's committing to wake up 30 minutes earlier, to read 10 pages of a book daily, or to finish one important task before checking social media. Each small win builds confidence, proving to themselves that they can follow through. Over time, this momentum grows into larger habits that support long-term goals. A powerful example comes from athletes. Elite performers do not achieve greatness by training only when they feel like it. They train every day, rain or shine, tired or energized. Their discipline becomes so ingrained that it feels automatic, almost like brushing their teeth. The same principle applies in business, writing, art, or any pursuit of excellence. The path to mastery is paved with disciplined repetition, not occasional bursts of effort. The misconception many people hold is that discipline kills freedom. In truth, it creates it. Think about money. If you lack financial discipline, you spend recklessly, piling up debt, and eventually feel trapped by bills and obligations. But if you are disciplined about saving and investing, you create financial freedom that allows you to live on your own terms. The same applies to health. Without discipline, you indulge in poor eating and skip exercise, which eventually limits your body and energy. With discipline, you build strength, vitality, and the freedom to enjoy life fully. In every area, discipline may feel restrictive in the short term, but it expands possibilities in the long term. One strategy successful people use is what psychologists call implementation. Intentions. Instead of vague goals like, I should exercise more, they make specific commitments such as, I will go for a run at 7 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. By defining the when, where, and how of their actions, they remove ambiguity and reduce the chances of procrastination. They also use tools like the 2-minute rule. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. These small tactics prevent procrastination from gaining a foothold. Another crucial part of discipline is accountability. Left to our own devices, it is easy to rationalize excuses. Successful people often create systems of accountability, whether by sharing their goals publicly, working with mentors, or joining groups of like-minded individuals. When others are watching, the cost of breaking discipline becomes higher, and the incentive to stay consistent grows stronger. But discipline is not about rigid perfection. It is about resilience. Everyone slips up. Even the most disciplined people miss a workout, break a habit, or lose focus sometimes. The difference is that successful people do not let one slip turn into a downward spiral. They recover quickly, forgive themselves, and get back on track immediately. Discipline is less about never falling and more about how fast you stand up after falling. Ultimately, the mistake of lacking discipline is not just about failing to reach specific goals. It is about missing out on the person you could become. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you are training yourself to settle for less. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you are shaping a stronger, wiser, more capable version of yourself. Over months and years, this difference becomes enormous. Successful people never make the mistake of underestimating discipline. They know that talent without discipline is wasted, ambition without discipline is empty, and dreams without discipline are nothing more than fantasies. They embrace discipline as the bridge between where they are and where they want to be. They understand that discipline is not a punishment, but the highest form of self-respect, proof that you value your goals enough to act consistently on them. In the end, discipline is freedom. It is the freedom to achieve, the freedom to grow, and the freedom to live life on your own terms. The lack of it is one of the deadliest mistakes that keeps people stuck, but the cultivation of it is one of the most powerful tools that leads to lasting success. Mistake number 2, fear of failure and not taking action. Fear of failure is one of the most powerful and invisible forces that hold people back from reaching their true potential. It operates silently, like an anchor chained to the feet of someone who desperately wants to move forward and yet remains stuck in place. For many people, fear of failure is the reason they hesitate, procrastinate, and ultimately abandon dreams that could have changed their lives. You can see it everywhere. In the business ideas that never get launched, in the books that never get written, in the opportunities that slip through people's fingers simply because they were too afraid to act. For every success story we hear about, there are countless untold stories of people who never even tried, because the thought of failing felt unbearable. The irony is that fear disguises itself as wisdom. People convince themselves that waiting is the smart choice. They tell themselves that they need to prepare more, that the timing isn't right, that they'll act once they feel ready. But ready is a myth. There is never a perfect moment when the stars align, when you know everything, and when the path forward is guaranteed to work. Waiting may feel safe, but in truth, it is the most dangerous decision you can make, because time is the one resource you can never get back. Every day you hesitate is a day you never reclaim. And while you are standing still, others are moving ahead. Inaction itself becomes the real failure, the silent thief of progress. The difference between successful people and everyone else is not that they never fail. In fact, the most successful individuals often fail more than anyone else. The key is how they interpret those failures. Average people see failure as proof that they are not good enough. They attach it to their identity and conclude, I failed, therefore I am a failure. Successful people see failure in an entirely different light. For them, it is not a permanent label, but temporary feedback. Failure is data. Failure is information about what doesn't work. Instead of being ashamed of it, they use it to adjust, to improve, and to try again with greater knowledge. History is filled with examples that prove this mindset. Take Thomas Edison, who made thousands of unsuccessful attempts before inventing the light bulb. When asked how he endured so many failures, he simply replied, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. For him, every failed attempt was not a dead end, but a step closer to success. If Edison had been afraid of failing, if he had allowed the weight of those repeated setbacks to define him, the light bulb as we know it today might never have existed. His story illustrates an essential truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the process that leads to success. Another modern example is Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. Before becoming the world's youngest self-made female billionaire, she endured years of rejection. Manufacturers dismissed her ideas, investors laughed at her, and many people told her she was wasting her time. But Blakely grew up with a unique relationship to failure. Her father would sit at the dinner table every week and ask her and her siblings, "What did you fail at this week?" Instead of scolding them for mistakes, he celebrated their attempts. If they had nothing to report, he would be disappointed. That simple ritual rewired her mind. Failure meant growth, effort, and courage. This mindset freed her from the paralysis that fear usually causes, allowing her to take risks others avoided. Without that reframing of failure, Spanx might never have existed. The problem with fearing failure is that it doesn't just stop you once, it conditions you into a habit of hesitation. Every time you avoid acting because of fear, you reinforce the belief that failure is dangerous. Slowly, your comfort zone shrinks. You stop raising your hand in meetings. You hold back from applying for jobs unless you meet every single requirement. You silence your ideas in conversations because you worry about being judged. What begins as one small hesitation evolves into a pattern of shrinking back, until eventually you are living a life far smaller than the one you are capable of living. Confidence, like a muscle, atrophies when not used, and fear of failure is the weight pressing down on it, preventing it from ever growing strong. Successful people feel fear too, but they refuse to let it dictate their behavior. They understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. The nerves are still there before a big presentation, but they step on stage anyway. The doubt is still there before launching a business, but they take the first step anyway. And here is the secret. Once you act, fear begins to lose its power. That intimidating task you've been putting off suddenly seems smaller the moment you begin. The phone call you dread becomes easier after you dial the number. Action weakens fear. Inaction feeds it. There are practical ways to dismantle fear of failure, and one of the most effective is to start small. You don't need to leap into the deep end immediately. Begin with small, manageable steps that prove to yourself you are capable of progress. If you dream of writing a book, don't worry about finishing 300 pages. Write one page today. If you want to launch a business, don't obsess over a full business plan. Talk to one potential customer. Each small step becomes evidence that you can act, and each piece of evidence chips away at fear's power. Another powerful strategy is to separate your identity from your results. Too many people equate failure with personal worth. They believe that if they fail at a task, it means they are failures as human beings. But this is a dangerous and false belief. Failure is not who you are. It is merely an outcome of what you attempted. By learning to see your results as separate from your identity, you give yourself permission to keep trying without shame. A failed project does not mean you are doomed. It means you now have new data about what doesn't work. Finally, redefine failure itself. If you define failure as the end, you will always fear it. But if you define failure as progress, as the act of gaining valuable information, you transform it into something useful. Every failed attempt removes one wrong path and brings you closer to the right one. Failure then becomes not a wall, but a stepping stone. The most sobering thought is this: when people look back on their lives, their deepest regrets are not usually about the things they tried and failed. They regret the things they never attempted. They regret the conversations left unspoken, the dreams left unexplored, the opportunities abandoned before they even began. Failure is painful in the moment, but inaction creates the lifelong pain of what if. Which would you rather carry? The sting of temporary failure or the heavy weight of permanent regret? The second deadly mistake successful people never make is letting fear of failure prevent them from acting. They understand that hesitation kills more dreams than failure ever will. They refuse to let "what if it doesn't work" stop them from trying because they know the better question is, what if it does? The only true failure is not trying at all. When you give yourself permission to fail, you also give yourself permission to succeed. That is why those who embrace failure as part of the process, who act even when afraid, are the ones who move forward, while the rest remain stuck. Mistake. 3. Poor time management. Time is the one resource that every human being is given equally. Each of us has 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, and 52 weeks in a year. And yet, when you look around, some people accomplish extraordinary things within that same block of time, while others struggle just to stay afloat. The difference isn't in the hours themselves, it's in how those hours are managed. Poor time management is one of the most destructive mistakes that unsuccessful people make, and it's one that successful people refuse to tolerate. Because while money lost can be earned back, and opportunities missed can sometimes be replaced, time is the only resource that disappears forever once it's gone. For many people, poor time management begins with a subtle misunderstanding. They confuse being busy with being productive. They fill their calendars with tasks, check off to-do lists, and move frantically from one activity to another, but at the end of the day, they wonder why they feel exhausted yet unfulfilled. The reason is simple: not all tasks are created equal. Spending 3 hours answering emails may feel like work, but it may not move you any closer to your long-term goals. Browsing endless reports may give the illusion of progress, but if it doesn't drive meaningful outcomes, it's little more than disguised procrastination. Successful people understand that the true measure of time management is not how much you do, but how much of what you do actually matters. One of the most powerful principles they follow is the Pareto principle, often called the 80-20 rule. This principle states that 80% of results often come from just 20% of efforts. That means most of what you do during the day contributes little to your success, while a small handful of activities drive the majority of your progress. Poor time managers spend their days drowning in the 80% of low-value tasks. Effective time managers ruthlessly identify the 20% of high-value activities and prioritize them. They ask themselves, what are the few actions I can take today that will create the most meaningful impact? And once they know the answer, they devote their time and energy to those actions first. Another key distinction between successful people and everyone else is how they handle urgency. Poor time managers often live in reaction mode, constantly putting out fires, responding to every message instantly, and tackling whatever feels most pressing in the moment. They confuse what is urgent with what is important, but the two are not the same. Urgent tasks scream for attention. They come in the form of phone calls, notifications, last-minute requests. Important tasks, however, are the ones that drive long-term progress: planning, strategizing, learning, creating. Successful people know that if you spend all your time on the urgent, you will never make time for the important. That's why they use tools like the Eisenhower matrix, which separates tasks into 4 categories: urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither urgent nor important. They focus relentlessly on the second category, important but not urgent, because that is where long-term growth is built. Consider how Warren Buffett describes time management. He says the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. That single word, no, is perhaps the most powerful time management tool of all. Poor time managers say yes too often. They say yes to every request, every meeting, every social obligation because they fear disappointing others or missing out. But every yes is also a no to something else, usually to the work that truly matters. Successful people are not afraid to guard their time with discipline. They know their priorities, and they protect them fiercely. Another critical element of time management is focus. Poor time managers live in a constant state of distraction. Their phones buzz, their email tabs are always open, and they bounce between tasks without ever finishing any of them. This constant context switching is not only unproductive, but also exhausting for the brain. Successful people, on the other hand, practice what author Cal Newport calls deep work. They carve out uninterrupted blocks of time to focus intensely on one meaningful task. During those blocks, distractions are eliminated, phones off, notifications silenced, environment optimized. The result is not only higher productivity, but also better quality work. An hour of deep, focused effort can accomplish more than an entire day of scattered multitasking. Why do so many people struggle with managing their time effectively? Part of the answer lies in comfort and avoidance. Working on meaningful tasks often feels uncomfortable because those tasks are hard, uncertain, or risky. It's easier to fill the day with shallow tasks, checking emails, rearranging documents, making lists, because they give the illusion of progress without the discomfort of real challenge. But easy choices lead to a hard life, while hard choices lead to an easier life. Successful people embrace the discomfort of focusing on what matters because they know that is where true progress lies. There is also an emotional dimension to time management. Poor time managers often underestimate the value of their own time. They treat it as though it were infinite, wasting hours on activities that bring no growth or joy. But once those hours are gone, they cannot be bought back at any price. Successful people recognize that every minute has value, and they treat their time with the same seriousness they would treat their money or health. They invest it wisely, knowing that their future is being built in the present. Practical strategies can help anyone improve their time management. One is to plan the day before it begins. Instead of waking up and drifting into whatever comes their way, successful people take 10 minutes each evening or morning to identify their top 3 priorities for the day. These are not just any tasks, but the tasks that align with their long-term goals. Another strategy is batching similar tasks together. Instead of checking email 30 times a day, they designate 1 or 2 blocks for it, freeing the rest of the day for higher value work. A third strategy is time blocking, where specific hours are reserved for specific types of work, ensuring that the most important tasks always have a protected place on the calendar. The emotional anchor here is powerful. Time is life. How you spend your hours is how you spend your existence. Every wasted day is a piece of your life you can never reclaim. Imagine reaching the end of your life and realizing that most of your days were consumed not by meaningful progress, but by distractions and busyness. The pain of that regret is far greater than the discomfort of learning to manage your time now. The third deadly mistake that successful people never make is poor time management. They do not confuse activity with accomplishment. They do not waste their energy on what is urgent at the expense of what is important. They do not allow distractions to dictate their day. Instead, they value time as their most precious resource. They prioritize ruthlessly. They focus deeply, and they protect their schedule from anything that does not align with their goals. Because they know that success is not built in leaps and bounds, but in the daily disciplined investment of hours. And once those hours are gone, they are gone forever. That truth is what drives them to treat every day as a building block toward the future they want, while others squander theirs and wonder why success never comes. Mistake number 4. Surrounding yourself with the wrong people. One of the greatest truths about success is that no one achieves it alone. Every great accomplishment in history, whether in business, science, sports, or art, has been shaped not just by individual talent, but by the circle of people surrounding that individual. The relationships you nurture either pull you closer to your goals or drag you further away. Yet one of the most devastating mistakes that unsuccessful people make is surrounding themselves with the wrong people. They underestimate how deeply influenced they are by their environment and allow negativity, mediocrity, or toxic behavior to creep into their lives. Successful people, by contrast, are deliberate about who they let into their inner circle. They understand that choosing the wrong people is a mistake so costly that it can derail even the most ambitious plans. The people around you act like mirrors. They reflect back the standards, beliefs, and habits that you either rise to meet or sink down to accept. If your closest friends complain constantly, make excuses, or avoid responsibility, it becomes easy to adopt the same mindset. You might not even notice yourself slipping because human beings are wired for conformity. We adapt to the energy of the group. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who are ambitious, disciplined, and solution-oriented, their mindset becomes contagious too. You begin to think bigger, push harder, and hold yourself accountable at a higher level. This is why Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." It is not just a catchy phrase. It is a truth backed by psychology and countless real-world examples. The wrong people show up in many disguises. Some of them are openly negative. They criticize every idea you share, mock your ambitions, or constantly highlight what could go wrong. Being around them is like carrying a weight on your shoulders. You walk away feeling drained and doubting yourself. Others are more subtle. They may seem supportive, but their actions reveal otherwise. They invite you to waste time, distract you from your priorities, or encourage habits that sabotage your growth. Some people don't want you to succeed because your success reminds them of their own lack of progress. Others genuinely care about you but simply don't share your vision or values. And by staying too close, you let their mediocrity shape your path. Successful people refuse to let these influences dominate their lives. They make tough decisions to distance themselves from relationships that no longer serve them, even when it hurts. They recognize that loyalty is important, but blind loyalty to toxic or stagnant relationships is self-sabotage. It does not mean cutting everyone out cold-heartedly. Rather, it means becoming intentional about how much access each person has to your energy and time. Not everyone deserves a front-row seat in your life, especially if they are not contributing to your growth or well-being. Choosing the wrong people doesn't just cost you emotionally, it costs you time and opportunities. Imagine spending years investing in friendships or partnerships that lead nowhere, while the right connections could have accelerated your progress exponentially. Opportunities often come through people. Introductions, collaborations, shared knowledge, or simple encouragement at the right moment. By surrounding yourself with the wrong crowd, you close the door to those opportunities before they even appear. Successful people know this, which is why they are strategic in building their networks. They seek mentors who have walked the path before them, peers who challenge them to grow, and even mentees who remind them of their responsibility to give back. There is another dimension to this mistake: romantic relationships and partnerships. Many talented individuals have seen their dreams collapse because they tied themselves to someone who did not share their vision, values, or discipline. The wrong partner can drain your energy, create constant conflict, or even sabotage your efforts, sometimes out of insecurity, sometimes out of neglect. Successful people take this decision very seriously. They understand that who you choose to share your life with can be either your greatest asset or your greatest liability. A supportive partner amplifies your energy and provides stability, while the wrong partner can undo years of hard work. But it's not only about avoiding toxic people, it's about actively seeking the right ones. Successful people surround themselves with those who embody the qualities they aspire to. They deliberately place themselves in rooms where they are not the smartest or most accomplished, because they know that growth happens when you are stretched. They seek mentors, read the works of great thinkers, join communities of like-minded individuals, and place themselves in environments where excellence is the norm. They know that iron sharpens iron, and by being around people who demand the best of themselves, they are forced to demand the best of themselves too. Why do so many people fall into the trap of choosing the wrong people? Sometimes it is fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of outgrowing their current circle. Sometimes it is comfort. It feels easier to stay with familiar faces, even if those faces hold you back, than to step into the unknown and build new relationships. And sometimes it is simply a lack of awareness. They don't realize how much influence others truly have over them. But ignorance is no protection from the consequences. Whether you acknowledge it or not, your circle is shaping you every day. Successful people take ownership of this truth. They conduct regular relationship audits, asking themselves tough questions. Who in my life is lifting me up, and who is pulling me down? Who inspires me to grow, and who tempts me to settle? Who celebrates my progress sincerely, and who secretly resents it? These questions may be uncomfortable, but they are essential, because every hour you spend with the wrong person is an hour stolen from the right one, and those hours add up into years. There's also a spiritual or emotional layer to this. Being around the right people doesn't just help you achieve more, it makes the journey more fulfilling. The right friends, partners, and colleagues don't just push you. They celebrate with you, encourage you during setbacks, and remind you of your worth when doubt creeps in. Life is too short to walk it weighed down by negativity. Successful people understand this deeply, and they are willing to make the hard cuts necessary to create space for those who truly belong. The fourth deadly mistake that successful people never make is choosing the wrong people. They do not allow toxic relationships, draining friendships, or unaligned partnerships to dictate their destiny. They are intentional about who they let into their circle, because they know that every person is either a weight that pulls them down or a wind that lifts them higher. They invest in people who challenge, support, and inspire them, and they protect themselves from those who would hold them back. Because at the end of the day, success is not just about what you achieve, it is also about who you become along the way and who you choose to walk beside. And when you choose the right people, the journey becomes not only more successful, but also more meaningful. Mistake number 5. Stopping learning and self-development. One of the most dangerous mistakes people make on the path to success is believing that learning stops after school, after a degree, or after reaching a certain milestone in their career. They treat education as something you finish, not something you carry for life. This mindset is subtle but lethal because the world around us never stops changing. Technology evolves, industries shift, knowledge expands, and skills that were relevant yesterday may already be obsolete today. To stop learning is to stop growing, and to stop growing is to begin falling behind. Successful people understand this truth at the deepest level. They know that their minds are their most valuable assets, and that neglecting continuous learning is a mistake they cannot afford to make. Think about the average person. Many graduate from school and then let their curiosity fade. They spend their evenings watching television or scrolling endlessly through social media instead of picking up a book, taking a course, or engaging in meaningful conversations that expand their perspective. They say they are too busy, but in reality they prioritize comfort over growth. Years later, they wonder why their careers have stagnated or why they feel stuck in life, unable to adapt to new opportunities. The answer is often simple. They stopped feeding their minds, and so their potential stopped expanding. Now contrast that with highly successful individuals. They are relentless learners. Bill Gates reads about 50 books a year. Warren Buffett spends up to 80% of his day reading and thinking. Elon Musk taught himself rocket science by devouring textbooks and talking to experts. These people don't rely solely on formal education. They take ownership of their learning journey every single day. They know that in a rapidly changing world, the ability to learn quickly and continuously is the ultimate competitive advantage. Knowledge compounds just like money does, and those who feed their minds regularly end up building a wealth of insight that pays dividends for a lifetime. But learning is not only about reading books. It is about staying curious, open, and humble enough to admit that you do not know everything. The biggest enemy of growth is arrogance, the belief that you already know enough. Many people who fail to reach their potential fall into this trap. They achieve a little success and suddenly think they have all the answers. They stop asking questions, stop seeking feedback, and stop pushing themselves to explore new fields. Meanwhile, the world continues to evolve and they slowly become outdated. Successful people avoid this trap by cultivating a beginner's mindset, no matter how much they achieve. They stay hungry for knowledge, always aware that there is more to learn. Continuous learning comes in many forms. It can be as simple as reading a few pages of a book each day, listening to podcasts during commutes, or attending seminars and workshops that sharpen your skills. It can mean taking online courses to stay ahead in your industry, or learning completely new skills that expand your horizons. For example, many professionals today are realizing the importance of understanding artificial intelligence, digital marketing, or data analytics, skills that were irrelevant just a decade ago but are now shaping entire industries. Those who commit to learning these new skills open doors to new opportunities, while those who resist are left behind. There is also immense power in learning from people, not just books. Successful individuals actively seek mentors who can guide them, peers who challenge them, and even students who bring fresh perspectives. They know that every conversation has the potential to teach something valuable if you listen with curiosity. They are not afraid to ask questions, even if it makes them look inexperienced, because they value growth over appearances. On the other hand, people who neglect learning often avoid these opportunities. They fear looking foolish, so they stay silent, missing out on lessons that could have saved them years of mistakes. One of the most overlooked aspects of continuous learning is self-reflection. Life itself is constantly teaching us, but many fail to pause and extract the lessons from their own experiences. Successful people regularly reflect on their wins and failures, asking, "What worked? What didn't? What can I do differently next time?" This habit of reflection turns every experience into a classroom and ensures that mistakes are rarely repeated. Those who neglect learning often move from one failure to another without ever stopping to analyze why, essentially reliving the same mistakes in different forms. It is also important to recognize that continuous learning is not only about professional growth, it enriches every area of life. People who keep learning about psychology, relationships, health, or philosophy are better equipped to handle challenges, connect with others, and live fulfilling lives. They become adaptable, resilient, and creative problem solvers. Those who neglect it, by contrast, often struggle with narrow perspectives, rigid thinking, and poor decision-making. They live inside the box of what they already know, never realizing that new insights could have transformed their situations. So why do people resist continuous learning despite its obvious benefits? Often, it is because learning feels uncomfortable. It requires humility, effort, and the willingness to face what you don't know. It means admitting gaps in your understanding and investing time that could otherwise be spent on short-term pleasures. Growth demands sacrifice, and not everyone is willing to pay that price. But successful people embrace this discomfort because they know it is the price of progress. They would rather feel the temporary strain of stretching their minds than the long-term regret of stagnation. There is also the challenge of consistency. Many people start with good intentions, buying books, signing up for courses, or setting ambitious learning goals, but then give up after a few weeks. Successful individuals overcome this by turning learning into a habit. They schedule time for it just like they would for exercise or work. They might dedicate 30 minutes every morning to reading, or make it a rule to listen to educational content while commuting. Over time, these small, consistent efforts compound into massive growth. Neglecting learning, on the other hand, compounds in the opposite direction. A little neglect each day adds up until years have passed, and the gap between you and those who kept learning becomes impossible to ignore. The fifth deadly mistake that successful people never make is neglecting continuous learning. They refuse to let their curiosity die after graduation, after a promotion, or after achieving one goal. They treat life as a classroom, and every experience as a lesson. They seek out knowledge from books, mentors, and experiences, and they apply it consistently. They understand that the world will never stop evolving, and so neither can they. To stop learning is to stop growing, and successful people choose growth at every stage of life. In the end, success belongs to the learners, not necessarily the smartest at the start, not the ones born with every advantage, but the ones who never stop adapting, never stop improving, and never stop feeding their minds. The path to success is not about knowing everything. It is about being committed to always knowing more. And when you embrace this mindset, you put yourself in the company of those who will never be left behind. As we come to the end of this journey together, it's important to pause and reflect on what we've uncovered. Success is often portrayed as a mystery, a complicated formula reserved only for the lucky or the exceptionally gifted. But the truth is much simpler and in some ways more empowering. Success is not just about doing the right things, it's about refusing to do the wrong ones. The 5 deadly mistakes we've explored, lacking discipline, fearing failure, mismanaging time, choosing the wrong people, and neglecting continuous learning, are traps that keep countless people stuck. Yet they are traps that can be avoided once you see them clearly. Think about it this way: each mistake is like a heavy chain weighing you down. The more chains you carry, the harder it becomes to move forward. But the moment you break even one, you feel lighter, freer, and closer to your goals. Imagine the transformation when you break all 5. Discipline builds consistency. Courage to act transforms fear into momentum. Wise use of time multiplies results. The right people lift you higher, and continuous learning keeps you sharp and adaptable. With these pillars in place, progress is no longer a struggle. It becomes the natural outcome of how you live each day. The challenge, of course, is not just to know these truths, but to apply them. Awareness is the first step, but action is what brings change. So I invite you to ask yourself, which of these 5 mistakes have you been making, and which one will you commit to breaking first? You don't need to fix everything overnight. Start with 1. Build momentum. Let small victories accumulate, and soon you'll find yourself on a path very few ever choose, but many admire. Remember this: success is not reserved for the chosen few. It is built day by day by those who have the courage to avoid what holds them back and the determination to keep moving forward. The question is not whether you can achieve it. The question is whether you will choose to.